I stood at the abandoned Millbrook station watching my daughter-in-law's car disappear into the fog. "Happy Mother's Day, Mom," she'd said, handing me a train ticket to nowhere. 2 hours passed before I understood this wasn't a gift. This was a test. The dementia evaluation forms hidden in her glove compartment had told me everything. But when she returned 48 hours later with that power of attorney document, her smile vanished. Standing beside me was Detective Sarah Brennan, and between us sat 3 suitcases filled with evidence that would destroy everything my son's wife had planned. The morning of May 12th started like any other Friday in my suburban Connecticut home. I was sitting at the kitchen table sipping my second cup of coffee and working through the crossword puzzle when I heard Jennifer's car pull into the driveway. The sound of her heels clicking up the walkway was unmistakable, that sharp, purposeful stride she always had. What was unusual was that she was alone. My son Brian and Jennifer always visited together on Fridays. "Morning, Mom," Jennifer called out as she let herself in with her key. Her voice carried an unusual brightness, like honey with too much sugar stirred in. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing a cream-colored blazer, and that practiced smile of hers, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Jennifer, dear, where's Brian?" I asked, setting down my pencil. At 67, I'd learned to pay attention to changes in routine. 3 years of widowhood had sharpened my instincts about when something felt off. "Oh, he got called to Chicago last minute. Big client emergency." She waved her hand dismissively and settled into the chair across from me. "But that's actually perfect because I have a special surprise for you, and Brian is terrible at keeping secrets." I noticed she'd brought her oversized designer purse, the one she usually reserved for important meetings. She placed it carefully on the empty chair beside her, keeping one hand protectively on the strap. "A surprise." I tried to match her enthusiasm, though something in my stomach tightened. In the 18 months since Brian had married Jennifer, I'd learned that her surprises often came with hidden costs. "Mother's Day is this Sunday, and I've planned something absolutely wonderful for you." She reached across the table and clasped my hand. Her fingers were cold despite the warm May morning. "You remember your friend Helen from college, the one who moved to Vermont?" I paused, searching my memory. "Helen Morrison. We exchange Christmas cards, but I haven't seen her in person for nearly 15 years. Well, I've arranged everything, a scenic train ride through the countryside to visit her. She's expecting you this afternoon." Jennifer pulled out what appeared to be a train ticket from her purse, waving it like a winning lottery ticket. "The Mountain Express departing at 2:30, first-class seats with panoramic windows. You'll love it." Something about this felt wrong. Helen and I were friendly, yes, but not close enough for surprise visits. And she lived in Burlington, a good 4-hour drive. Why hadn't Jennifer mentioned which station? How did she even have Helen's contact information? "That's very thoughtful, Jennifer, but I should call Helen first. It's quite presumptuous to just appear on her doorstep." "Already done." Jennifer's smile stretched wider. "I spoke with her yesterday. She's thrilled. She's even planning to make that apple cobbler you two used to bake in college." I hadn't baked apple cobbler with Helen. That was my sister Ruth's recipe, and Ruth had been gone for 10 years. The tightness in my stomach grew stronger. "Jennifer, I appreciate the gesture, but this is rather sudden. I have a dental appointment on Monday and my book club meets Tuesday." "You'll be back by Sunday evening, I promise." She squeezed my hand harder. "When was the last time you did something spontaneous? Thomas would want you to enjoy life, not sit in this house surrounded by memories." Invoking my late husband's name was a low blow, but effective. Thomas had always encouraged me to be more adventurous. Still, he also taught me to trust my instincts during our 42 years of marriage. And right now, every instinct was screaming warnings. "Let me at least pack properly. I said, starting to rise from my chair. No need, I've thought of everything. Jennifer jumped up and hurried to the hallway, returning with a small weekend bag I recognized as one from my closet. I packed your comfortable clothes, medications, and toiletries. Even included that novel you've been reading. My blood chilled. When had she been in my bedroom? When had she gone through my things? I kept my medications in the bathroom cabinet, my novel on the nightstand. She would have had to search thoroughly to pack everything she claimed. Jennifer, this is all very unusual. I think I should speak with Brian first. Her face tightened for just a moment before the smile returned. He's in meetings all day. You know how these Chicago trips are. Besides, this was his idea originally. He thought you needed to get out more, said you've been forgetting things lately. Forgetting things. Oh, nothing serious. She laughed, but it sounded forced. Just little things. Like when you couldn't find your reading glasses last week and they were on your head? Or when you forgot about the dentist appointment and showed up on Tuesday instead of Monday? I remembered both incidents clearly. The glasses had been on the kitchen counter where I always left them until Jennifer moved them to the living room, and my dentist appointment had always been on Monday. The receptionist had confirmed it when I called to apologize for the mix-up after Jennifer insisted I'd gotten the day wrong. I should still call Brian, I insisted, reaching for my phone on the counter. Jennifer was faster. Oh, let me update your phone first. Brian downloaded this new app for tracking your train journey. He wanted to make sure you arrived safely. She took my phone before I could protest, her fingers flying across the screen. They're all set. Now we should get going. Traffic can be unpredictable on Fridays. As she turned to grab her purse, it tipped slightly and I saw several brochures slide partially out. Sunrise Memory Care Center, Managing Assets for Dementia Patients, and Legal Guidelines for Incompetency Declarations. My heart stopped. Jennifer quickly shoved them back in, but not before I saw my name written on a sticky note attached to the top brochure. Everything clicked into place with horrible clarity. The forgotten appointments, the misplaced items, the sudden concern about my memory. Jennifer wasn't planning a Mother's Day surprise. She was building a case. But I'd spent 40 years as a bank manager evaluating loan applicants and detecting fraud. I'd learned to read people to spot when numbers didn't add up, when stories didn't align. And I'd learned the most important lesson of all: sometimes the best response to a trap is to walk right into it with your eyes wide open. You're right, I said, forcing warmth into my voice. A trip sounds lovely. Let me just use the restroom before we go. Of course, but hurry. We don't want to miss the train. Jennifer's relief was palpable. She thought she'd won. In the bathroom, I quickly tucked an extra $20 bill into my bra and slipped my small Swiss Army knife into my sock. Thomas had given me that knife 30 years ago, insisting I always carry it. You never know when you might need to cut through something, he'd said. Today I had a feeling I'd be cutting through more than string. When I returned, Jennifer was texting rapidly on her phone. She shoved it into her pocket when she saw me. Ready for your adventure. I picked up my purse and the weekend bag she'd packed. Ready as I'll ever be. As we walked to her car, I noticed she'd parked at an angle that blocked my own vehicle in the driveway. Not that it mattered. I had a feeling wherever she was taking me, she had no intention of my driving home afterward. She chatted brightly during the drive, talking about Brian's work, their plans to renovate their kitchen, how concerned they'd been about me living alone in such a big house. Every word was carefully chosen, painting a picture of a devoted daughter-in-law worried about her aging mother-in-law's declining faculties. If I hadn't seen those brochures, I might have believed her performance. But I had seen them. And now, as she turned off the main highway onto increasingly rural roads, claiming construction delays that I knew didn't exist, I prepared myself for whatever came next. Jennifer thought she was driving a confused old woman to her doom. She had no idea she was delivering a former bank fraud investigator directly into the heart of her scheme. The fog rolled in as we drove deeper into the countryside, and I watched my daughter-in-law's reflection in the side mirror. Her smile had finally disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. Good. I preferred honesty, even if it came in the form of betrayal. At least now I knew exactly who I was dealing with. The roads Jennifer chose grew progressively narrower as we drove further from civilization. She'd long since abandoned any pretense of highway construction instead, claiming she knew a scenic shortcut that would make the journey more enjoyable. I watched familiar landmarks disappear as we ventured into parts of Connecticut I'd never seen in my 67 years of living here. "The countryside is lovely this time of year," Jennifer commented, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. She kept checking her phone, which was mounted on the dashboard, following what appeared to be very specific directions. Not the kind of route someone would take to any active train station. The forest pressed in on both sides of the crumbling asphalt road. Overhead branches formed a canopy so thick that the afternoon sun barely penetrated, casting everything in an eerie green twilight. My phone, which Jennifer had so helpfully updated, sat silent in my purse. I suspected whatever app she'd installed had more to do with disabling communication than tracking any journey. "Are you sure this is the right way?" I asked, keeping my voice deliberately uncertain. "I don't remember any train stations out this far." "Oh, it's a special historic station," Jennifer replied quickly. "They only run scenic tours from there. Very exclusive. That's what makes it such a perfect Mother's Day gift." We passed a rusted sign partially hidden by overgrowth, "Millbrook Station, 2 miles." The sign looked like it hadn't been maintained since the Eisenhower administration. Jennifer's shoulders relaxed slightly when she spotted it, confirming we were approaching her intended destination. The road deteriorated, further potholes jarring the car despite Jennifer's attempts to navigate around them. No train service requiring first-class tickets would operate from such a remote location. But I kept these observations to myself instead, commenting on the pretty wildflowers growing along the roadside, playing the part of the oblivious elderly woman she believed me to be. Finally, we turned onto a gravel access road that led to what had once been a parking area. Weeds pushed through cracks in the pavement, and a chain-link fence long since torn open bore a "no trespassing" sign that someone had used for target practice. Beyond it stood Millbrook Station, or what remained of it. The building was a ghost of 19th century ambition. Red brick faded to brown windows boarded with plywood that had weathered to gray. The platform, visible through gaps in the overgrowth, was crumbling concrete with weeds growing through every crack. Rails still ran alongside it, but they were rust-colored and clearly hadn't seen a train in decades. "Here we are," Jennifer announced with forced brightness, pulling into the deserted lot. Hers was the only vehicle in sight. "Isn't it charming they've kept all the original architecture?" I studied the abandoned structure, noting the graffiti spray-painted across the walls, the missing roof tiles, the door hanging off its hinges. "It certainly is. Authentic," I managed. Jennifer grabbed her purse and came around to open my door, solicitous as always when playing her role. "Let's get you settled on the platform. The train should be along any minute." I allowed her to help me out, noting how she kept one hand on my elbow, guiding me toward the derelict platform. Her other hand clutched her phone thumb poised over the screen. Recording, taking photos, building her evidence of my confusion. The platform reeked of mildew and decay. Broken glass crunched under our feet, and I was grateful for my sturdy walking shoes. Jennifer led me to a bench that looked like it might actually support weight, brushing off the worst of the debris with exaggerated care. "There you go, Mom. Comfortable." I sat carefully, testing the bench's stability. Jennifer, I don't see any other passengers. Are you certain the train stops here? Oh, you're just early. She produced the ticket from her purse with a flourish. C230, Departure Mountain Express to Burlington. I examined the ticket she handed me. It was printed on regular paper, not ticket stock, and the Mountain Express logo looked like something created in basic graphic design software. The date was correct, but everything else about it screamed forgery. Most telling was the small print at the bottom citing a railroad company that I knew had gone bankrupt in 1987 because Thomas and I had owned stock in it. This is very thoughtful, I said, folding the ticket and placing it in my purse. Will you wait with me? Oh, I wish I could. Jennifer's phone suddenly buzzed with urgent notifications. But I just got a text from the pharmacy. There's been a mix-up with your prescriptions, and I need to sort it out before they close. You know how important your medications are. My medications that she'd packed in the weekend bag. The ones I took for minor arthritis and cholesterol, nothing that couldn't be missed for a day or two. But I nodded with concern. Oh dear, yes. Those prescriptions are important. I'll just run quickly to town and be back before you know it. She was already backing away, car keys jingling. The train will be here any moment. You have your ticket, your bag, everything you need. Oh, and there's a lovely waiting room inside if you want to explore while you wait. Through the broken station door, I could see nothing but shadows and debris. The lovely waiting room was likely full of broken furniture and whoever had been using the abandoned building for shelter. Jennifer, I called as she reached the edge of the platform. How will I reach you if the train is delayed? She paused, and for just a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, uncertainty. But it vanished quickly. Oh, you know these old stations. No cell service. But don't worry, the train is never late. Enjoy your trip, Mom. And then she was hurrying back to her car, heels clicking rapidly on the broken pavement. I sat perfectly still on the bench watching as she climbed into her vehicle, started the engine, and drove away without looking back. The sound of her car faded, gradually swallowed by the forest, until only silence remained. I waited a full 10 minutes before moving, just in case she circled back to check. The afternoon sun slanted through the trees, creating long shadows across the abandoned platform. Somewhere in the distance, a crow cawed, the sound echoing off the empty buildings. Finally, I stood and began to explore my surroundings properly. First, I checked my phone. As suspected, Jennifer's update had somehow disabled both cellular service and Wi-Fi. The screen showed no signal bars, and airplane mode was mysteriously activated and password protected. She'd been thorough. I walked to the parking area where she'd left me, noting fresh tire tracks in the gravel. But there were other tracks, 2 older ones, suggesting this wasn't the first time someone had visited this abandoned place recently. Cigarette butts near the platform edge looked relatively new, not weathered like everything else here. The trash bin near the bench yielded an interesting discovery. Among the usual detritus was a crumpled piece of paper with Jennifer's handwriting. She must have dropped it while fumbling with her phone and purse. It was directions to Millbrook Station printed from an online map with handwritten notes in the margins, 15 miles from nearest town. No cell towers, no security cameras verified. Platform structurally sound enough. Confirm no homeless present. At the bottom in different ink, someone had added, perfect, same as Hartford setup. Hartford setup. My blood ran cold. This wasn't Jennifer's first attempt at whatever this was. I pocketed the paper carefully, evidence for later. Behind the station building, I found more disturbing signs. Fresh tire tracks led to a cleared area where someone had recently parked. The ground was littered with more cigarette butts, all the same brand. Someone had spent considerable time here watching, waiting, planning. That's when I spotted it, a small camera mounted in a tree positioned to capture the platform and bench where Jennifer had left me. A tiny red light blinked steadily, battery powered, probably motion activated. Someone wanted a record of my time here alone and confused. I resisted the urge to wave at the camera. Instead, I returned to the platform and sat back down, pulling the novel from my weekend bag. If someone was watching, they'd see an elderly woman patiently waiting for a train, occasionally checking her worthless ticket, gradually becoming more agitated as time passed. I could play that part, but my mind was racing, pieces of a larger puzzle falling into place. Jennifer's sudden marriage to Brian after a whirlwind romance, her insistence on managing their joint finances, her subtle suggestions that I was becoming forgetful, the way valuable items in my house would go missing only to reappear in strange places after Jennifer found them, the concerned comments to Brian about my declining mental state. She was building a case for incompetency, and this abandoned station, this staged abandonment, would be the crescendo. When I was eventually found confused and disoriented after days alone, who would doubt that poor Marcia needed someone to manage her affairs? Who would question devoted Jennifer stepping in with power of attorney to protect her mother-in-law's assets? Except Jennifer had made two critical mistakes. First, she'd underestimated me, assuming that age automatically meant weakness and confusion. Second, and more importantly, she'd left me with something invaluable: time to think and plan. The sun was beginning to set, painting the abandoned station in shades of orange and red. Soon it would be dark, and I needed shelter. The station building, despite its decay, would provide some protection from the elements. But first, I had preparations to make. I'd survived 42 years of marriage, raised 2 children, managed millions in banking assets, and weathered my husband's death. I'd be damned if I'd let my son's scheming wife defeat me now. Jennifer thought she'd left me helpless at this deserted station. Instead, she'd given me exactly what I needed: isolation to plan and evidence of her intentions. As darkness crept across the platform, I smiled grimly. Jennifer would return probably in 48 hours, expecting to find a broken, confused old woman ready to sign anything. What she'd find instead would be something entirely different. But first, I had a long night ahead and a performance to plan. The camera in the tree would record an elderly woman's descent into confusion and fear. What it wouldn't capture was the banker's mind behind the act, calculating interest on a debt that would soon come due. Darkness fell across Millbrook Station like a heavy curtain, transforming the already eerie abandonment into something from a horror film. The temperature dropped quickly once the sun disappeared, and my light spring jacket offered little protection against the creeping chill. But I'd weathered worse. Thomas and I had once been caught in a blizzard during a camping trip in 1978. We'd survived that with far less shelter than this crumbling station could provide. First priority, shelter and warmth. The main station building loomed before me, its broken door hanging at an angle that suggested someone had forced it open long ago. I approached carefully, using my phone's flashlight function, one of the few things Jennifer's tampering hadn't disabled. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a waiting room that had seen better decades. Wooden benches lay overturned, their slats broken for firewood by previous visitors. Graffiti covered most surfaces, ranging from simple tags to elaborate murals. The ticket window was smashed, its brass bars bent outward as if something had escaped rather than broken in. But the roof, despite missing tiles, remained mostly intact. It would do. In the corner, someone had built a makeshift fireplace using an old metal drum cut in half. Charred wood and ash suggested recent use. Urban explorers, homeless seeking shelter. Either way, they'd left behind something useful. I gathered what dry wood I could find, mostly broken furniture and old railroad ties, and set about creating a small fire using matches from my purse. Thomas always insisted I carry them. "You never know," he'd say. 30 years later, he was still right. The smoke drew something else from the shadows graffiti I hadn't noticed before. On the far wall, someone had written in neat block letters, "They left me here too. Survived 3 days. You will too." Below it, a date from just last month. My blood chilled, and not from the temperature. I settled near the fire, keeping the smoke moving up through a hole in the roof. From my weekend bag, I pulled out the supplies Jennifer had so thoughtfully packed. Medications I didn't urgently need. Clothes suitable for a pleasant weekend, not survival. A novel I'd already finished. But at the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, was something Jennifer hadn't packed my emergency kit from my purse. Protein bars, a small water bottle, basic first aid supplies, even an emergency blanket. I always kept it in my bag, a habit from my banking days, when I'd sometimes work late and get stranded by weather. The night stretched endlessly. Every sound made me jump. Scratching that might be rats or might be branches. Creaking that could be old wood settling or could be footsteps. The fire helped both for warmth and the primal comfort of light and darkness. I dozed fitfully, waking often to feed the flames and check my surroundings. Dawn came slowly, gray light filtering through broken windows. My joints protested as I stood, reminding me that 67 years didn't forgive a night on hard surfaces. But I was alive, unharmed, and thinking clearly. More than Jennifer would expect. Morning brought an unexpected gift, voices. I peered through a crack in the boarded window and saw a jogger on the old access road, earbuds in, maintaining a steady pace. He looked to be in his 50s, wearing expensive running gear. This wasn't some random trail. He chose this route deliberately. I stepped outside, making sure to appear disheveled but not threatening. "Excuse me, sir. Could you help me?" The jogger stopped, pulling out his earbuds. His expression shifted from annoyance to concern as he took in my appearance, an elderly woman clearly having spent the night rough, standing on an abandoned train platform. "Ma'am, are you all right? What are you doing here?" "I'm waiting for the train," I said, letting confusion color my voice. "My daughter-in-law said it would come yesterday, but it never arrived. Do you know when the next one is scheduled?" His face went through several expressions before settling on a mixture of pity and anger. "Ma'am, there haven't been trains here since the 80s. Someone left you here." "Jennifer said it was a Mother's Day surprise, a scenic trip to see my friend Helen." I showed him the fake ticket, watching his jaw tighten as he read it. "This is criminal," he muttered, then louder. "Ma'am, I'm Pete Garrison. I run this trail every morning. You're not the first person I've found here." My heart jumped, but I kept my expression confused. "Not the first." Pete pulled out his phone, a high-end model that clearly had no signal issues. "Last month I found an elderly gentleman here, Robert Chen. He'd been here 3 days, left by his caregiver. Poor man was dehydrated, disoriented. They had him declared incompetent within a week." "Incompetent?" I let fear creep into my voice. "Unable to manage his own affairs. His caregiver got power of attorney, cleaned out his accounts." Pete was scrolling through his phone. "Look, I have a friend who might help. She's a retired detective who's been looking into these cases. Would you like me to call her?" There are more." My shock was only partially feigned. "At least 3 that she knows of. All elderly, all left in remote locations by family members or caregivers, all declared incompetent shortly after." He was already dialing. "Sarah, it's Pete. I've got another one at Millbrook. Yes, same situation. Her name is Marcia." While Pete talked, I studied him more carefully. Expensive running shoes, fitness tracker, the easy confidence of someone used to taking charge. A potential ally, but I needed to be careful about how much to reveal. "She's on her way," Pete announced, ending the call. "About 20 minutes out. Can I get you anything water? I have energy bars." "You're very kind," I said, accepting a bottle of water gratefully. "Did Mr. Chen, did he recover?" Pete's expression darkened. "Physically, yes, but the legal damage was done. His nephew got everything. The house savings investments. Robert's living in a state facility now. His nephew was his caregiver, some woman he'd married 6 months earlier. They found out later she'd done the same thing in Jersey and Pennsylvania, different names each time." My hands trembled, and not from the cold. Jennifer had been married to Brian for 18 months. How many others had there been before? A car approached, kicking up dust on the gravel road. Not Jennifer's pristine sedan, but a practical SUV that had seen better days. The woman who emerged looked like she'd been born skeptical steel gray hair, pulled back severely sharp eyes that missed nothing. She wore jeans and a blazer that didn't quite hide the bulge of a shoulder holster. "Marcia, I'm Sarah Brennan, retired Bridgeport PD, now doing private investigation." She shook my hand firmly, assessing me with cop eyes. "Pete says you were left here by family, my daughter-in-law, Jennifer. She said it was a Mother's Day trip." Sarah's expression didn't change, but something in her posture sharpened. "Jennifer what?" "Jennifer Preston. Well, she was Jennifer Madison before she married my son Brian." Sarah pulled out a tablet, fingers flying across the screen. "Brunette, about 5'8", late 30s, drives a white Lexus." "Yes, exactly. Do you know her?" "I know of a Jennifer Morse who matches that description. Left her last husband's mother at an abandoned rest stop in Pennsylvania. And a Jennifer Mitchell who did the same thing at an old airport in Delaware. Same pattern each time." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. "She's done this before. At least 4 times that I can document. Probably more." Sarah was taking photos of everything: the platform, the fake ticket, my condition. The victims are always declared incompetent within days of being found. Assets transferred to the caring family member who rescued them. By the time anyone thinks to investigate, Jennifer, or whatever she's calling herself, has vanished. "But she's married to my son. They have a life together." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "So did Patricia Morse with her husband in Pennsylvania, right up until his mother's money ran out. Then she became Jennifer Mitchell and found a new mark in Delaware. Patricia Morse. Her real name, as far as I can tell, though even that might be an alias. She's wanted in 3 states for elder abuse and fraud. Been tracking her for 2 years, always one step behind." Sarah fixed me with those sharp eyes. "Marcia, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Are you really confused about where you are and why?" This was the moment of truth. I could continue the act, let events play out as Jennifer planned. Or I could trust this stern-faced woman with the badge-shaped tan line on her belt. "I know exactly where I am," I said quietly. "And I know exactly what Jennifer is trying to do. I've known since I saw the dementia brochures in her purse yesterday morning." Sarah's smile was sharp as winter. "Then we have work to do. She'll be back probably tomorrow. They always wait 48 to 72 hours. Long enough for dehydration and exposure to cause real confusion, but not long enough for serious harm. When she returns, she'll have witnesses. A doctor who'll swear you're incompetent, a lawyer with papers ready to sign. We need to be prepared." "What do you need me to do?" "First, we document everything. Every detail of how you got here, what she said, what she did." Sarah pulled out a small video camera. "Then we set our own trap. Patricia or Jennifer or whatever she's calling herself thinks she's catching a confused old woman. Instead, she'll walk into something else entirely." We spent the next hours building the case. Sarah recorded my statement, took photographs of the abandoned station, documented the camera in the tree that was still recording my every move. She made calls to contacts in other states, building a timeline of Jennifer's activities. The pattern was chillingly consistent. She always marries sons, Sarah explained. Never daughters. Sons are statistically less likely to question a wife's concerns about an aging parent, more likely to delegate care decisions, and she's good at picking them successful, busy traveling for work. Men who love their mothers but feel guilty about not being around more. Brian, my sweet-driven son who worked 60-hour weeks and apologized constantly for not visiting more often, who'd been so grateful when Jennifer took an interest in my well-being, who trusted his wife completely. "We need to warn Brian," I said. "Not yet." Sarah's voice was firm. "If he knows he might confront her, tip her off. We need her to walk into this believing her plan is working. Can you do that? Can you play confused and frightened when she returns?" I thought of Robert Chen in a state facility, his life's work stolen. Of the other victims Sarah had mentioned, their dignity and independence ripped away by a woman who saw the elderly as nothing more than walking ATM machines. "I spent 40 years in banking, reading people, spotting lies, uncovering fraud. I can play whatever part is needed." Sarah smiled, the first warm expression I'd seen from her. "Good. Then let's discuss exactly how we're going to destroy Jennifer Preston Madison Mitchell Morse, or whatever name she's using when she shows up tomorrow." As we planned, the sun climbed higher, warming the decrepit platform. Somewhere Jennifer was probably having lunch, confident her scheme was progressing perfectly. She had no idea that her past had finally caught up with her in the form of a retired cop who'd made her capture personal, and a banker who understood that the best prepared trap was one the prey walked into willingly. Tomorrow, Jennifer would return expecting to find a victim. Instead, she'd find something else entirely: justice, waiting patiently on a crumbling platform, dressed in the disguise of a confused old woman. Sarah Brennan's SUV smelled like coffee and determination. As we drove away from Millbrook Station, she outlined the plan with military precision. We weren't going home, not yet. Instead, we headed to her small office in Bridgeport, a second-floor walk-up above a dry cleaners that she'd converted into her investigation headquarters. "Patricia, or Jennifer as you know her, is a creature of habit," Sarah explained as she unlocked multiple deadbolts. "She follows the same pattern every time: 48 to 72 hours of isolation, then returns with witnesses to document the victim's confused state. Those witnesses are always the same two people." The office was organized chaos. Whiteboards covered every wall, filled with photos, timelines, and red string connecting various cases. Jennifer's face appeared multiple times under different names, but it was unmistakably her, that practiced smile, those calculating eyes. "Dr. Marcus Webb." Sarah pointed to a photo of a thin, nervous-looking man in his 60s. "Lost his license in California for overprescribing benzos. Now he makes house calls for special situations, providing psychiatric evaluations for the right price. He's declared 7 elderly people incompetent in the last 3 years. Guess who was always the concerned family member?" The second photo showed a woman in a sharp business suit. "Janet Price, attorney, specializes in elder law," which sounds noble until you realize she's created a cottage industry of stripping assets from seniors. Always has the paperwork ready, always knows which judges to file with, always gets emergency conservatorships pushed through before anyone can object. I studied the photos, memorizing faces. How is this legal? It exists in the gray areas. Adult children concerned about aging parents, doctors providing medical opinions, lawyers following proper procedures. By the time anyone realizes it's a scam, the money's gone and Jennifer has a new identity. Sarah pulled out a thick file. But she made a mistake with Robert Chen. His daughter lives in Hong Kong, couldn't get here immediately. By the time she arrived, she knew something was wrong. Hired me to investigate. Sarah showed me Robert's case file. Photos of him at Millbrook Station looking genuinely confused after 3 days without food or proper water. Medical reports declaring him suffering from severe dementia. Bank records showing systematic transfers of his assets to his loving caregiver, Patricia Morse. $2 million in 6 weeks, Sarah said grimly. Then Patricia vanished and Jennifer Madison appeared in Delaware. We spent hours building the trap. Sarah had cameras smaller than buttons, recording devices that looked like pens, even a tracking device to place on Jennifer's car. But the most important preparation was mental. You need to appear deteriorated but not dangerously so, Sarah coached. Confused about time and place but physically capable. If you seem too far gone, they might call real emergency services instead of their tame doctor. We need Webb to examine you, declare you incompetent, have you sign papers. All on camera. We practiced scenarios. How to act when Jennifer returned. What to say to the doctor. How to seem cooperative while documenting everything. Sarah was a demanding director, making me repeat scenes until my confusion seemed absolutely authentic. Remember, Patricia is smart. She's been doing this for years without getting caught. One false note and she'll run. As night fell, Sarah drove me back to Millbrook Station. We had work to do in the darkness. She installed additional cameras, tiny things that would capture every angle. Audio recorders in the walls, even a GPS tracker on my purse in case Jennifer tried to move me elsewhere. I'll be nearby, Sarah promised. There's an old service road about half a mile east. I'll monitor everything from there. If something goes wrong, if you feel unsafe, just mention your late husband's middle name. I'll hear it and intervene immediately. Back at the station, I settled in for another night. This time, I had better supplies, a sleeping bag. Sarah provided real food, water. But I was careful to maintain the appearance of deterioration. I kept the fire small and smoky, let ash mark my clothes, didn't clean my face or hands. By morning, I needed to look like I'd survived 2 nights of confusion and fear. The second day passed slowly. I stayed visible on the platform, occasionally wandering to the parking area, looking hopefully for cars. For the camera in the tree and any others Jennifer might have placed, I was an elderly woman slowly losing hope and coherence. Inside, I was reviewing everything Sarah had taught me, preparing for the performance of my life. Late afternoon brought the sound I'd been expecting: car engines. Not 1, but 3 vehicles approaching. I recognized Jennifer's white Lexus immediately. Behind her, a black Mercedes with tinted windows. Behind that, a gray BMW. The whole production had arrived. I stood from the bench swaying slightly, letting hope and confusion war on my face. "Jennifer, is that you, dear?" Jennifer emerged from her car dressed in concerned daughter-in-law costume, conservative sweater, minimal makeup, worry lines carefully etched. "Oh my God, Mom! We've been looking everywhere for you!" She rushed to embrace me, and I caught the scent of expensive perfume over calculation. Over her shoulder, I watched the others emerge. Dr. Webb looked exactly like his photo, thin, shifting nervously, carrying a medical bag that had seen better decades. Janet Price was pure predator in a pantsuit, already pulling documents from her briefcase. I waited for the train. I told Jennifer, letting tears come. But it never came. I tried to call you, but my phone... Something's wrong with my phone. "Oh, Mom." Jennifer's voice dripped false sympathy. "There aren't any trains here? This station has been closed for decades. You must have gotten confused." "No, you brought me here, for Mother's Day, to see Helen." I pulled out the crumpled fake ticket. "See, you gave me this." Dr. Webb stepped forward, all professional concern. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Dr. Webb. Jennifer called me when you went missing. She's been terribly worried. May I examine you?" "Missing, I wasn't missing. I was waiting for the train." I let my voice rise, edged with panic. Jennifer said she'd be right back. She said she had to get my medications. Mom, that was 2 days ago, Jennifer said gently. You've been here for 2 days. Don't you remember? The examination was thorough and completely staged. Webb checked my vitals, asked me basic questions, shone lights in my eyes. I answered some correctly, others with careful confusion. What day was it? Monday, Friday. Mother's Day was soon, wasn't it? Who was the president? I gave the name of someone who'd left office a decade ago. Severe disorientation, Webb murmured to Jennifer loud enough for Price's camera to catch. Temporal confusion, memory gaps, inability to process reality, clear signs of advancing dementia. She's a danger to herself. What should we do, Doctor? Jennifer's performance was flawless, the worried daughter-in-law seeking guidance. She needs immediate intervention, professional management of her affairs before she harms herself or loses everything to scammers. He produced forms from his bag. I can provide the medical certification needed for emergency conservatorship. Price stepped forward smoothly. I have the paperwork prepared. Given the circumstances finding her in this condition after she wandered off, no judge would deny the petition. We can have everything in place by tomorrow. I don't understand, I whimpered. I just want to go home. Of course you do, Mom. Jennifer took my hand, squeezing just too hard. But first we need you to sign some papers, just to make sure you're safe. You trust me, don't you? This was the crucial moment. Too much resistance and they might simply try again later. Too little and it wouldn't seem authentic. I stared at the papers Price produced, letting my hand shake. What is this? Just giving Jennifer the ability to help you, Price explained smoothly. To manage things while you get better. Nothing permanent. Nothing permanent except the complete transfer of my assets, my independence, my life. I looked between them, 3 vultures waiting for me to sign my own execution. Brian, I said suddenly, I want to talk to Brian. Where's my son? Jennifer's mask slipped for just a second. He's still in Chicago, Mom, but he knows I'm taking care of you. He trusts me to do what's best. I want to talk to him. I pushed the papers away. I'm not signing anything without talking to Brian. Webb and Price exchanged glances. Jennifer's jaw tightened, but she recovered quickly. Of course. Let's call him right now. She pulled out her phone, dialing. I heard it ring, then Brian's voicemail. Of course. She'd known he wouldn't answer. See, he's in meetings. But Mom, you can't stay here. You need help now. She pushed the papers back. Just sign and we can sort everything else out later. I looked around the abandoned station at the concerned faces watching me at the papers that would end my life as I knew it. Then I picked up the pen with a trembling hand. Where do I sign? Jennifer's smile was radiant as she pointed to each line. Power of attorney, asset management, medical decisions. Every document another bar in the cage she was building. I signed them all with shaky letters, playing the confused elder perfectly. There. Jennifer gathered the papers quickly. Now let's get you home and cleaned up. Dr. Webb will follow us to make sure you're okay. She helped me to her car, every movement solicitous now that she had what she wanted. But as she opened the door, I turned back to look at the station one last time. The afternoon sun caught something metallic in the bushes, a reflection from one of Sarah's cameras. Jennifer had her signed papers, but we had something better, everything recorded, every word documented, every participant identified. The trap hadn't just caught a mouse, it had caught an entire nest of rats. As we drove away from Millbrook Station, Jennifer chatted brightly about getting me settled, finding the best care facility, making sure I was comfortable. She had no idea that comfort was the last thing on my mind. I was thinking about justice served cold and precise as a banker's calculation. The poker face phase was over. Soon it would be time to show our cards. Jennifer's car smelled like victory and vanilla air freshener. She drove with one hand the other, clutching her phone as she made rapid calls. I caught fragments, secured, signed everything, move forward immediately. Each word, another nail in her coffin, all being recorded by the device Sarah had planted in my purse. We're going to stop by the house first, Jennifer announced, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. Get you cleaned up before the evaluation. Evaluation. I let confusion color my voice. Just a formality, Mom. Dr. Webb needs to do a more thorough examination in a proper setting, for the courts. She said it casually, as if court-ordered psychiatric holds were everyday occurrences. Behind us, Webb's Mercedes and Price's BMW followed in perfect formation. A funeral procession for my independence, or so they thought. I slumped in the back seat, playing the defeated elder while memorizing every detail. License plates, routes. The way Jennifer's knuckles went white when her phone buzzed with a text she didn't like. We pulled into my driveway just as the sun was setting. Home looked different somehow, like seeing it through a stranger's eyes. The house Thomas and I had bought in 1975, where we'd raised our children, where I'd mourned him, where I'd planned to live out my days. Jennifer already looked at it like inventory. Let's get you inside, she cooed, helping me from the car with exaggerated care. Webb and Price parked behind us, gathering their props for the next act. That's when everything changed. A familiar Toyota Camry sat by the curb, one I hadn't expected to see. Brian's car. My son emerged from the driver's seat, still in his Chicago business clothes face, etched with exhaustion and something else. Fury. Brian, Jennifer's voice cracked. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Chicago. He walked toward us, each step deliberate. Funny thing about that meeting. The client didn't exist. The company didn't exist. The hotel reservation was fake. But you knew that, didn't you, Jen? Jennifer's face cycled through emotions like a slot machine, surprise, confusion, attempted innocence. Honey, I don't know what you're talking about. Your mother, she's been missing for 2 days. We found her at an abandoned train station. She's very confused. Millbrook Station, Brian said flatly. Where you left her. With a fake ticket to a train that hasn't run since 1987. The silence stretched taut. Webb and Price had frozen halfway out of their vehicles, sensing the shift in dynamics. Jennifer's hand tightened on my arm. Brian, your mother is ill. She's been showing signs of dementia. Ask Dr. Webb. She gestured desperately at the nervous man. Tell him what you found. Webb stepped forward, trying to salvage the situation. Mr. Preston, your mother is exhibiting clear signs of cognitive decline, temporal displacement, memory loss, inability to distinguish reality. Save it. Brian's voice cut through the performance. I know exactly who you are, Dr. Marcus Webb. Lost your license in California, 1998. Now you make house calls for people like my wife. Or should I say Patricia Morse? Jennifer went very still. The mask finally slipped, completely revealing something cold and calculating underneath. But before she could speak more, cars arrived. Sarah Brennan's SUV pulled in first, followed by 2 police cruisers and an unmarked federal vehicle. No, Jennifer whispered. Then louder. No, this isn't. You don't understand. She's sick. She needs help. Sarah emerged from her vehicle with the satisfied look of a hunter who'd cornered particularly elusive prey. Behind her, uniformed officers took positions. From the federal car stepped a woman in a severe suit who radiated authority like heat. Jennifer Madison, also known as Jennifer Mitchell, Patricia Morse, and Patricia Morrison. The federal agent held up her credentials. Special Agent Diana Russo, FBI Financial Crimes Division. We need to talk. But the real shock came from the taxi pulling up behind the official vehicles. 3 elderly people emerged, each moving with the careful dignity of those who'd survived ordeals. I recognized Robert Chen immediately from Sarah's photos. The others must have been victims from other states. "That's her," Robert said, pointing at Jennifer with a steady hand. "That's the woman who stole everything from me. She left me at a rest stop in Ohio," the elderly woman beside him added. "Said my daughter was meeting me there, 3 days in November before someone found me." The third victim, a distinguished-looking man with a military bearing, simply stared at Jennifer with disgust. "Airport hangar in Delaware. Told me my grandson was flying in to surprise me." Jennifer tried to run. It was a desperate, foolish attempt hampered by her heels and the circle of law enforcement. She made it 3 steps before an officer intercepted her. The sound of handcuffs clicking closed was the sweetest music I'd heard in years. "You don't understand," Jennifer screamed as they restrained her. "She's incompetent. I have the paperwork. Tell them Dr. Webb. Tell them what you found." But Webb was already backing toward his car, hands raised. I was just asked to do a medical evaluation. I don't know anything about..." "Going somewhere," Dr. Agent Russo nodded to another officer. "We have questions about your evaluations in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, all remarkably similar, all followed by significant asset transfers." Price tried to maintain her professional composure. "I'm an attorney. I was simply preparing legal documents at my client's request. Everything was completely fraudulent," Sarah supplied helpfully. "We have video of you coaching Mrs. Thompson on what to sign. Audio of you discussing the emergency conservatorship before any medical evaluation. Your bar association will be very interested." The roundup was swift and thorough. Webb, attempting to flee, was arrested before he reached his car. Price, still protesting her innocence, was led away in handcuffs. But it was Jennifer who commanded attention, her careful mask completely shattered. "Brian." She turned to my son, tears streaming. "Baby, you know me. You know I only wanted to help. Your mother, she's been struggling. I was trying to protect her. Protect us. Our future." Brian walked slowly to where she stood between 2 officers. For a moment, I thought he might weaken. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small recorder. "Our future." He pressed play. Jennifer's voice filled the driveway, recorded from some previous conversation. "Once the old bat signs over power of attorney, we'll have everything. The house alone is worth $2 million. Plus her investments, her bank accounts. We can finally live the life we deserve, baby. Just play along a little longer." Jennifer's face went white. That's not what it sounds like. I was just..." "Thursday night," Brian said quietly, "when you thought I was asleep. You were on the phone with someone laughing about how easy it would be, how you'd done it before, how I was the perfect mark because I felt guilty about not spending more time with my mother." I moved then, walking steadily to stand beside my son. No shuffling, no confusion, no trembling hands. Webb's eyes widened as he realized the extent of the deception. "Hello, Jennifer," I said clearly. "Or do you prefer Patricia? I have to say, for someone who's allegedly suffering from severe dementia, I feel remarkably lucid." "You knew?" Her voice was small, defeated. "I've known since you made your first mistake. You see, I spent 40 years in banking. 40 years spotting frauds, catching embezzlers, protecting assets. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when things started going missing, when appointments were mysteriously rescheduled, when you just happened to find my reading glasses in places I'd never leave them?" Sarah stepped forward, pulling out an evidence bag containing the crumpled directions to Millbrook Station. "This helped too. Your handwriting, Jennifer, along with notes about the Hartford setup. We've already connected you to 6 other cases across 4 states. Federal charges, Patricia. Wire fraud, elder abuse conspiracy. You're looking at 25 to life. The fight went out of Jennifer then. She sagged between the officers, no longer the polished daughter-in-law or the concerned caregiver. Just another criminal caught in her own web. As they led her away, she turned back one last time. It would have worked. She said not to me, but to Brian. If you hadn't been so damn loyal to her. Brian took my hand, squeezing gently. She's my mother. You never understood that, did you? You saw a mark. I saw the woman who raised me, who supported me, who deserved better than a vulture circling her life. The convoy of official vehicles departed one by one, taking Jennifer and her accomplices to face justice. The other victims stayed longer, sharing stories, exchanging contact information, forming bonds forged by shared betrayal. Robert Chen shook my hand with tears in his eyes. You got her, he said simply. You actually got her. We got her, I corrected. All of us, Sarah, Brian, everyone she underestimated. As the last car pulled away, I stood in my driveway with my son, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. The house was mine. My assets were safe. My mind was clear. But more than that, a predator who'd stalked the elderly had been caged. I'm sorry, Brian said quietly. I brought her into our lives. I should have seen. You saw when it mattered, I told him. You chose your mother over your wife. Not everyone would have done that. We went inside together, leaving the ghost of Jennifer Preston behind. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and statements and the long process of justice. But tonight, I was home. I was safe. And I was surrounded by people who saw me not as a mark or a meal ticket, but as someone worth protecting. The trap had sprung perfectly, and somewhere in federal custody, a woman who'd made a career of destroying families was learning what it felt like to be the one who was caught. The federal courthouse in Hartford buzzed with activity as Jennifer's empire of deception unraveled thread by thread. I sat in the witness preparation room reviewing my testimony with Agent Russo for what felt like the 100th time. 3 months had passed since Millbrook Station, and every day had revealed new layers to Jennifer's crimes. She was systematic, Agent Russo explained, spreading files across the table. Your case broke it open, but we've now identified 12 victims across 6 states. Always the same pattern: marry into families with elderly parents, isolate the elder, create evidence of incompetence, seize assets. The numbers were staggering. Over $15 million stolen over 8 years, 12 lives destroyed, 3 victims who died in state facilities alone and broken while Jennifer spent their life savings. And those were just the ones they'd found. Agent Russo suspected there were more earlier victims from before Jennifer perfected her system. Your testimony is crucial, Russo continued. You're the only one who caught her in the act, who documented everything. The others were found too late after the psychological damage was done. Through the window, I watched news vans gathering. Jennifer's case had captured national attention. The pretty fraudster who'd preyed on the elderly, the doctor who'd sold his soul for profit, the lawyer who'd perverted justice for percentage points. Cable news couldn't get enough of it. My phone buzzed. Brian checking in as he did every day now. Grand jury convenes in 20 minutes. You ready? Ready, I texted back. Ready to face the woman who'd tried to steal my life. Ready to speak for those who couldn't. Ready to watch her destruction. The grand jury room felt smaller than I'd expected, intimate despite its importance. 23 citizens sat in tiered rows, their faces serious as Agent Russo presented the evidence. Charts showing money transfers, photos from abandoned locations, medical records falsified by Dr. Webb, and at the center of it all, recordings from Millbrook Station. Jennifer's voice filled the room. She needs immediate intervention, professional management of her affairs before she harms herself or loses everything to scammers. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The scammer warning about scammers while picking her victim's pocket. When my turn came, I told the story simply and clearly. No embellishment needed. The facts were damning enough. How she'd manipulated Brian. How she'd gaslit me for months. How she'd left me at that abandoned station fully expecting to find a broken woman when she returned. "But you weren't broken," the prosecutor prompted. "No," I said, meeting the eyes of each juror. I was angry, and I was prepared, because I'd spent a lifetime learning to spot lies, and Jennifer told nothing but lies. The indictment came down that afternoon. 47 federal counts, including wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse, and racketeering. The RICO charges were particularly satisfying. Jennifer hadn't acted alone. She'd run a criminal organization, and now everyone involved would pay. Webb cracked first. Within days of his arrest, he'd flipped completely, providing detailed records of every fraudulent evaluation he'd performed. His testimony revealed Jennifer's network corrupt social workers who'd fast-track conservatorship applications, judges who'd rubber stamp orders without proper review, nursing home administrators who'd accept confused elderly patients without asking questions. She had a playbook, Webb told investigators in a recording played at the preliminary hearing. Scripts for what I should say, which tests to perform how to document cognitive decline that didn't exist. She paid me $5,000 per evaluation. I needed the money. I didn't think about the victims. Price held out longer, maintaining her attorney-client privilege defense until investigators found her personal files. Detailed notes about each victim, strategies for asset stripping, a literal checklist titled Maximum Extraction Timeline. Her law license was suspended immediately. Criminal charges followed. But it was Jennifer's own mother who delivered the most devastating blow. Eleanor Morrison flew in from Florida, a small woman in her 70s who looked like she'd been carrying a terrible weight for years. "I've been waiting for this day," she told the court during victim impact statements. Patricia, or Jennifer as you know her, learned from the best. Her father. He did the same thing to his mother, my mother-in-law. Stripped her assets, had her declared incompetent, let her die alone in a state facility while he spent her money. The courtroom was silent as Eleanor continued. "I tried to stop him, tried to protect her. He turned Patricia against me, taught her that the elderly were just resources to be harvested. When he died in prison, I thought it was over. Then Patricia started. First with my mother, her own grandmother, then others. I've been tracking her, reporting her, begging someone to listen for 8 years. Eleanor pulled out a thick folder. Every victim, every alias, every city she fled to. I hired private investigators with my Social Security checks. I called police departments until they blocked my number. No one believed a mother would hunt her own daughter, but I knew what she was, what her father made her, what she chose to remain." Jennifer watched her mother with an expression I'd never seen before. Not calculation or false emotion, but something raw and real. Shame, recognition. For a moment she looked human. Then the moment passed. When offered the chance to speak, Jennifer stood and delivered a performance worthy of her talents. Tears, trembling voice claims of mental illness and childhood trauma. She painted herself as a victim driven to crime by forces beyond her control. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she said, looking directly at the victims section where I sat with Robert Chen and the others. "I was sick. I needed help, not prison." The judge wasn't moved. "Ms. Morrison, you systematically targeted society's most vulnerable members. You studied them, gained their trust, and destroyed their lives with surgical precision. Mental illness doesn't explain the detailed planning, the multiple identities, the careful selection of accomplices. You're not sick. You're predatory. The sentence when it came was everything we'd hoped for. 25 years federal time, no possibility of parole for 20. Consecutive state sentences to follow. Asset forfeiture of everything she'd stolen. Lifetime ban on working with elderly or vulnerable populations. Jennifer collapsed when the judge read the sentence. Not a calculated feint for sympathy, but genuine shock. She'd always escaped before always found new hunting grounds. The reality of decades in prison broke through her delusions. Webb received 10 years cooperation considered. Price got 15 and disbarment. The corrupt social workers, judges, and administrators faced their own charges. The entire network Jennifer had built came crashing down, taking dozens of complicit professionals with it. After the sentencing, the victims gathered outside the courthouse. Robert Chen had regained control of his remaining assets. The woman from Ohio was living with her daughter again. The veteran from Delaware had become an advocate for elder rights. We'd all lost something to Jennifer, but we'd found something to strength solidarity and the satisfaction of justice served. She never expected us to fight back, Robert said, watching reporters interview Agent Russo. That was her mistake. She thought age made us weak. Brian joined us, having testified about discovering his wife's true nature. The divorce had been finalized a month ago, uncontested, once Jennifer realized fighting it would only reveal more crimes. He looked older now, worn by betrayal and guilt, but also stronger. I'm starting a foundation, he announced. The Marcia Thompson Foundation for Elder Protection. Funding investigations, supporting victims, lobbying for stronger laws. What happened to Mom, to all of you, it can't happen to others. Eleanor Morrison approached our group hesitantly. I'm sorry, she said simply. I created her. Harold and we twisted her into this. I've been trying to stop her for so long, but I was always too late, always arriving after the damage was done. I took her weathered hands in mine. You didn't create her. She made her choices, and you never stopped fighting to make it right. That matters. We stood there, an unlikely group bound by shared trauma and shared triumph. The autumn sun was setting over Hartford, painting the courthouse steps golden. Jennifer was gone, locked away where she could never hurt another elder. Her network was shattered. Her victims were finding healing. But more than that, we'd sent a message. The elderly weren't easy marks. We weren't disposable. We had voices and value and the ability to fight back when cornered. Jennifer had seen us as prey. She'd learned too late that even prey have teeth. That night, I returned to my house, my sanctuary that Jennifer had tried to steal. In the garden Thomas and I had planted together, I found a new kind of peace. Not the peace of ignorance or the peace of isolation, but the peace of survival and purpose. The destruction was complete. Jennifer's criminal empire had fallen. Justice had been served. And somewhere in federal prison, a predator was learning what it felt like to be caged by the very system she'd manipulated for so long. The ghosts of Millbrook Station could rest now. Their story had been told. Their suffering had led to salvation for future victims. And their voices, channeled through those of us who'd survived, would echo through every courtroom where elder abuse was tried, a warning to those who thought age meant weakness. We are not your prey. We are not your payday. We are human beings with dignity, rights, and the determination to protect ourselves and each other. Jennifer Morrison learned that lesson the hard way. May her destruction serve as education for anyone else who might follow in her footsteps. The elderly have survived too much to be defeated by those who mistake gray hair for gray matter. We've weathered storms, raised families, built careers, and buried loved ones. A con artist with a fake smile and fraudulent papers is nothing compared to what we've already overcome. Justice tastes sweeter when you've had to fight for it. And that night, as I prepared for bed in my own home, safe in the knowledge that Jennifer would spend decades contemplating her choices, I savored every drop. 6 months after Jennifer's sentencing, I stood in the renovated community center in downtown Hartford, watching a room full of elderly faces light up with recognition and understanding. The Marcia Thompson Foundation for Elder Protection had officially launched its first educational seminar, Recognizing the Red Flags, a guide to protecting yourself from financial predators. Brian stood beside me, pride evident in his posture. He'd thrown himself into the foundation work with the same intensity he once reserved for corporate deals. It was his penance, he said, though I'd told him repeatedly that he had nothing to atone for. He'd chosen truth over comfort, his mother over his marriage. Not everyone would have been that strong. Thank you all for coming. I began, my voice carrying clearly through the microphone. 6 months ago, I was left at an abandoned train station by someone I trusted. Today I'm here to make sure that what happened to me never happens to any of you. The audience leaned forward, a mix of seniors, their adult children, and caregivers. In the front row sat my fellow survivors, Robert Chen, now a regular speaker at our events, Maria Santos from Ohio, Walter Hughes from Delaware. We'd become a team traveling across New England to share our stories and teach others to protect themselves. Sarah Brennan had joined us, too officially retired from police work, but unable to resist the call of justice. She'd developed a comprehensive training program for law enforcement, teaching them to recognize the signs of elder financial abuse before it was too late. Her presentation, scheduled after mine, was titled, When Family Becomes Foe, Investigating Familiar Fraud. Isolation is their first weapon, I explained to the audience. They separate you from your support system, make you dependent on them, convince you that your memory is failing, when really they're the ones rewriting history. I walked through Jennifer's playbook step by step. The moved items, the rescheduled appointments, the gradual erosion of confidence, the concerned comments to others about declining mental capacity. Each tactic projected on the screen behind me, illustrated with real examples from our cases. But here's what they don't expect. I continued clicking to a slide showing resources and strategies. They don't expect you to keep records, to tell friends about strange incidents, to question sudden changes, to trust your instincts when something feels wrong. A hand shot up from the audience. An elderly woman, probably mid-70s, with worry etched in every line of her face. What if it's really happening? What if I really am forgetting things? Excellent question, I responded warmly. Normal aging includes some memory changes. You might forget where you put your keys or struggle to remember a name. That's different from finding your keys in the freezer when you never go near the freezer. One is normal. The other is someone moving your keys. I shared the documentation system Sarah had taught me. Keep a journal. Note unusual incidents. Tell a trusted friend when things seem off. Take photos of where you leave important items. Create a network that can verify your reality when someone tries to distort it. Predators like Jennifer count on our silence, our embarrassment, our fear of being seen as paranoid. I explained. But there's no shame in protecting yourself. There's no paranoia in recognizing patterns. There's only wisdom in learning from what happened to us. The seminar continued for 2 hours. Sarah presented her law enforcement segment, showing officers how to differentiate between genuine concern and manufactured crisis. Brian discussed the legal protections available, the importance of advance directives created while fully competent. Robert shared his recovery journey, how he'd rebuilt not just his finances, but his faith in humanity. During the break, the woman who'd asked the first question approached me. "My daughter-in-law," she said quietly. "She's been suggesting I'm confused, moving things, telling my son I forgot conversations we never had." I took her hands, feeling them tremble. "What's your name?" Dorothy Williams." "Dorothy, do you have someone you trust? Someone not connected to your son or daughter-in-law?" She nodded. "My sister in Boston." "Call her tonight. Tell her everything. Start documenting today. And here." I handed her Sarah's card. "Call this number if things escalate. You're not alone and you're not crazy. Trust yourself." After the seminar, our team gathered for dinner at a local restaurant. The mood was celebratory but tinged with purpose. Each successful event meant more potential victims warned, more predators deterred. 23 seminars booked for next month. Brian reported, scrolling through his tablet. Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. 3 police departments want Sarah's training program, and we've had inquiries from AARP about going national. "National," Robert mused. "Jennifer operated in 6 states. There are probably hundreds like her out there." "Then we'll find them," Sarah said firmly. "Or better yet, we'll teach their targets to spot them first." Eleanor Morrison had joined our cause too, despite her age and the pain of her daughter's crimes. She'd become our researcher, using her years of tracking Jennifer to build profiles of common tactics and warning signs. Her insider knowledge was invaluable, bought with years of anguish. "Any word from the prison?" Walter asked carefully. We all knew Eleanor visited Jennifer monthly, hoping for what redemption, understanding. Some sign of the daughter she'd lost to greed? Eleanor shook her head. She still blames everyone but herself. Her father for teaching her, me for not stopping him, society for making it so easy. But last visit. She paused, choosing words carefully. She asked about the foundation. Wanted to know if we were really making a difference. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That we've already prevented 3 attempts in Connecticut alone. That families are talking about financial safety over dinner. That adult children are learning to spot manipulation tactics. That her legacy isn't the money she stole, but the movement she inspired." "How did she react?" Maria asked. "She cried." Eleanor's voice was soft. For the first time since her arrest, she actually cried. I don't know if it was self-pity or genuine remorse, but it was real emotion. Maybe 25 years will be enough time for her to find her conscience. We raised our glasses in a toast, but I proposed a different honor. Not to Jennifer's tears, but to Dorothy Williams, who trusted herself enough to ask for help today. To all the Dorothys out there who will recognize the danger before it's too late. To Dorothy, we chorused. Later that night, I sat in my garden despite the October chill. The foundation had installed security lights at my request, not because I feared physical danger, but because I'd learned to appreciate the comfort of illumination. No more shadows where predators could hide. Brian joined me, bringing 2 cups of tea. We sat in companionable silence, watching leaves fall from the oak Thomas had planted 40 years ago. "I've been thinking about Dad," Brian said eventually. What he would think about all this. "He'd be proud of you," I answered immediately. "You did the hardest thing a child can do. You chose truth over comfortable lies." "I almost didn't." His voice was rough with memory. "When Jennifer called about Chicago, I almost went, but something felt wrong. Dad always said to trust that feeling." Thomas had indeed always said that. Trust your gut. Verify before you trust. Love with your heart, but think with your head. Lessons that had saved me at Millbrook Station. "I've met someone," Brian said suddenly. "At the foundation, Amanda. She's a social worker, specializes in elder advocacy. Lost her grandmother to a scam similar to ours." And I prompted gently, And I'm terrified, he admitted. How do I trust again? How do I know she's real? I considered my answer carefully. You trust but verify. You watch for actions matching words. You introduce her to people who love you and see what they observe. You go slowly, and you remember that Jennifer was the exception, not the rule. Most people are genuine. She wants to meet you, Brian said. When you're ready, no pressure. Bring her to next week's seminar, I suggested. Let me see her in action working with the elderly. Actions reveal character better than any dinner conversation. Brian smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in months. Still the banker analyzing risk and return. Some habits serve us well, I agreed. Though these days, I'm investing in something more valuable than money. I'm investing in protection, education, and hope. A year ago, I'd been a widow living quietly in Connecticut. My biggest worries centered on retirement and loneliness. Jennifer had shattered that quiet life, but from the pieces we'd built something stronger. A network of survivors, an educational movement, a foundation that would outlive us all. We have that film crew coming next month, Brian reminded me. The documentary about the case. 60 minutes. I nodded. Sarah thinks national exposure will help other victims come forward. Are you ready for that? Your story coast to coast? I thought about all the Dorothys out there being gaslit by their own families, the Roberts being isolated and confused, the Walters being stripped of dignity along with assets. If my story could save even one of them, the exposure was worth it. I'm ready, I said firmly. Jennifer took me to that station to break me. Instead, she gave me a platform. I intend to use it. The stars were bright above Hartford, no longer hidden by the fog of deception. Somewhere Jennifer sat in a federal cell contemplating decades of consequence. Dr. Webb was in minimum security teaching literacy to fellow inmates as part of his rehabilitation. Janet Price was fighting her appeal from a studio apartment, her assets frozen, her career destroyed. Justice had been served, but more importantly, prevention was being taught. Every seminar reached dozens of potential victims. Every trained officer could spot the signs earlier. Every family conversation about financial safety built another barrier against predators. Eleanor Morrison's words echoed often in my mind. Evil isn't born, it's taught. But so is good. So is vigilance. So is the strength to stand up and say, this is wrong, when someone tries to convince you otherwise. The Marcia Thompson Foundation for Elder Protection wasn't just my legacy or Brian's penance. It was all of ours, every survivor who'd refused to be silenced, every family member who'd chosen difficult truth over comfortable deception. It was Eleanor's attempt to balance the scales her husband had tipped toward cruelty. It was Sarah's retirement project that gave her purpose beyond her badge. Most of all, it was a promise to every elder who'd been told they were confused when they were actually being deceived. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not disposable. You have value, dignity, and the right to live your final years free from predation. As Brian and I headed inside, I paused at Thomas's photo in the hallway. I protected what we built, I told his smiling face. And now I'm building something new, something that will protect others long after I'm gone. In the end, Jennifer had given me an unexpected gift. She'd shown me that I wasn't a vulnerable old woman waiting out her days. I was a warrior with wisdom, a teacher with experience, a voice for those being silenced. She'd tried to steal my twilight years. Instead, she'd ignited my purpose. The autumn wind carried the scent of change, of seasons turning, and life continuing. Somewhere out there, another Jennifer might be plotting against another victim. But now that victim might attend our seminar first, might recognize the warning signs, might trust themselves enough to seek help before it was too late. That was our victory. Not just Jennifer's imprisonment, or the money recovered, or the network dismantled. Our true triumph was in every elder who would sleep safely tonight, aware and empowered and protected by knowledge Jennifer never thought we'd share. Millbrook Station stood empty, still a monument to failed cruelty, but in community centers and police departments and family homes across New England, the lessons of that abandonment were being learned and taught and lived. We'd found our strength in the place Jennifer thought would break us. We'd discovered our voices when she tried to silence us. We'd built our fortress from the very weapons she'd used against us. And that more than any prison sentence was the ultimate justice. Jennifer had set out to destroy the elderly. Instead, she'd created an army of protectors. Her legacy wasn't the money she'd stolen or the lives she'd damaged. It was the movement she'd inadvertently inspired, the solidarity she'd forged among her victims, the education born from her cruelty. In trying to hunt us, she'd taught us to defend not just ourselves, but each other. And that lesson, unlike her freedom, would last forever. The phone rang as we settled in for the night. Dorothy Williams, calling to say she'd spoken with her sister, started documenting, felt stronger already. Another save, another victory, another reason to continue. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new predators, new victims needing help. But tonight in my home that Jennifer failed to steal, surrounded by the purpose she'd accidentally given me, I was content. The hunter had become the hunted. The victims had become the victors. And the abandoned station where it all began had become the birthplace of something Jennifer never expected: hope. Thank you for listening to my story. I said to the darkness, imagining all of you who might hear this someday. If you're experiencing something similar, please know you're not alone. Trust yourself. Document everything. Reach out for help. And remember, your age isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Use it. What would you do if someone you trusted tried to convince you that your own mind was failing? How would you fight back? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story touched you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of survival and justice. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because you never know who might be standing on their own abandoned platform, waiting for permission to trust themselves again. Thank you for joining me on this journey from victim to victor. May you never need these lessons, but if you do, may you remember that strength comes not from youth or wealth or power, but from the simple act of refusing to be silenced when you know the truth. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and most importantly, stay true to yourself. The predators count on our silence. Let's disappoint them together.